And a very good morning to you. This is Newsline. We are live from Dawson Street in Colombo at the Newsfirst studios. Unfortunately, the weather is playing pandu with our guest who is stuck somewhere on his way here, Mr. Wasanta Samarasinghe. And we've got for you on the phone, live on the telephone, we've got Mr. Rusripal at Tenakon. And if our services are working properly, we may be able to hear him. Very good morning to you, Mr. Rusripala.
Good morning, Farah. It's a very bad weather.
Terrible weather, and you're probably the right place at home.
Yes.
Now then, the news this morning, all the newspapers are sort of full of it, and which is that it says here that the United National Party is to nominate Sajid as the presidential candidate on conditions. How do you view this information as you open your newspapers this morning, Mr. Rusripala?
Yeah, I have not had time to peruse the newspapers, but I can guess what is there. But now, from observing what has been happening in the past, in recent past in the country, it is a pathetic situation why the UNP resorted to this level of deciding on a candidate for for the post of president in this country. If you trace the history of UNP, they have never ever had a controversy of this nature to the best of our recollection in their history, because a presidential candidate election or selection of a presidential candidate is a very important step in the democracy of this country. I am not talking as a UNPer, but as a person who loves democracy and as an important party that stands for democracy in this country. The UNP should have played a positive and a dynamic and a more straightforward role in nominating their presidential candidate long time ago. And finally, if they are now deciding to nominate Mr. Sajid Premadasa, I think they are doing it, the leadership is doing it because it is inevitable that they cannot do away with it. So therefore, it is not it doesn't appear to be an honest step that is taken. However, I think they are left with no alternative but to nominate a person like Mr. Sajid Premadasa, because the UNPers all around the country appears to ask him as their choice candidate.
And of course, Mr. Rusripala, and of course, Mr. Rusripala, the nomination of Sajid Premadasa must be welcome news from your very special perspective, which is the fight against corruption. We have no credible allegations against Mr. Premadasa, and it's welcome news, is it not, to have somebody, a real Mr. Clean?
No, I think from that point of view, Sajid Premadasa's appearance seems to be a very, very important step, because the country really needed at least to come to the competition and come to the arena on a very, very clean basis for the people to have their choice. So Mr. Sajid Premadasa conforms to that requirement fully, because his past and his political records do not indicate any sort of I should say corrupt or anything to do with any corruption or any misdoings while he was holding any position. This is the most important thing. And knowing some of the things that the leadership of the UNP has done, taking, for example, the bond scam that was in the central bank, just few months after they are coming into power. You see, he seems to be the only choice that is available to the UNP to put forward as a clean person. This is my personal view about him, not as a UNPer, but as a person observer from looking from outside. So I think he will be he will be able to give a very good fight, straightforward fight, going on the basis of if it is a corrupt-free corrupt-free government that people are expecting and people are hoping to achieve. I think Sajid is a very good candidate to face that situation. Then people have a choice.
And Mr. Rusipala, Mr. Premadasa is reflective of the youth. He's 52 years old or 52 years young, and he has this Mr. Clean sort of ambience about him. But is it not reflective of the fact that the younger members of the United National Party have clearly said the bigger message is enough, and we really want to get on with it? And do you think that with the nomination of Sajid Premadasa as the potential nomination of Sajid Premadasa as the presidential candidate, do you think that the public will be ready to forget all about the bond scam, or do you think that they will be expecting Mr. Premadasa to provide leadership to accountability for accountability, really?
I think answering your question about the age issue, I think it's a very, very important factor, at least for the UNP. I mean, to have given a chance to the younger second generation politicians to come up and then play a role in the development of this country. That is a most important thing. But all this time, the whole country looked at the leader as a mature person and as an aged person and as a person who has had enough political experience. But taking into account the role and the background of Mr. Sajid Premadasa, he, I think, fulfills, although he's very young, he fulfills those requirements because he has had the hands-on experience with his father as the president of this country, a grassroots man, even for a short time, as a grassroots leader, he would have given him enough impetus to his son, to follow up the footsteps of the father. Therefore, he has a lot of experience in that respect. So they are age-wise, although he is young, he fulfills the requirements of the younger generation of the aspirations of the younger UNPers in the first place. And secondly, he is not without experience. And then coming back to the background, when you take the UNP on the whole and the bond scam, he stood completely clean out of that mess. No telephone calls, no involvements, no mishandlings, nothing of that sort. So, and he stood clean in that thing. That shows, and not only that, he declared on very many occasions publicly that he denounced what happened in the central bank and that it was a black mark to the UNP, entire UNP, not only to the UNP, even to the Yahapalana, the good governance government that was brought in 2015. So, I mean, he has stood clear out of that mess. Therefore, for the UNP, I think he is the best candidate.
Yesterday, Mr. Sajid Premadasa called on all those people who had left the United National Party for whatever reason to rejoin and to join in the battle against to make the United National Party the party of choice for all of Sri Lanka. And let's go to a little package that we've got, which carries Mr. Premadasa's message. Do stay on the line, Mr. Rusipala. Thank you.
Issuing a media release, the minister stated that disparities in ideologies are matters that can be discussed and a consensus can be reached rather than using it as a reason to distance themselves from the party. Therefore, the minister urges all provincial councillors, local government authorities and all party representatives to join hands with him in the journey to make the people and the party victorious. Minister Sajid Premadasa further stated that he will extend an invitation to the former General Secretary of the UNP, Tissa Atnayaka, to join him in reclaiming the glory of the party. Attending the parliamentary group meeting held to decide on the presidential candidate representing the United National Front, Minister Sajid Premadasa responded to these questions raised by journalists.
කොම සූදානම් ඔබතුමාගේ සූදානම් ගැන කතා කරනවා කවද්ද මේ දිනේ එන්නේ
මම විශේෂ කාරණාවක් කියන්න තියෙනවා.
I have something to say. I have made a number of requests to the Prime Minister to conduct a meeting between the Central Working Committee and the Parliamentary Group of the United National Front. I made the request today that the two groups meet and hold a discussion. When I made a request to the Prime Minister through a letter, I specially stated that the Central Working Committee and the Parliamentary Group of the United National Party should meet and reach a consensus. After taking into consideration the requests made to me by the party leaders of the United National Front, I made a small amendment to that request. That is, that the Central Working Committee and the Parliamentary Group of the United National Front should meet and hold discussions in order to come into a final consensus on the presidential candidate. The final date to come into an agreement on that decision is Thursday. Thereby on Thursday, we must reach a final consensus.
දැන් අවසන් දිනේ කියලා තියෙන බ්‍රහස්පතින්දා. ඒ බ්‍රහස්පතින්දා අපි ඒ තීන්දුවට එළඹෙන්නට ඕන.
අමුතුම එදිනෙදි රහස් ඡන්දයක් වගේ දෙයක් සිද්ධ වෙනවද
අදහස වුණේ
It was agreed upon that a final consensus will be reached through discussion. If that fails, we may have to resort to another democratic measure.
වාදී ක්‍රමවේදී අනුගමනය කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
සමාජ මාධ්‍ය පළ වෙනවා එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයෙන් අපේක්ෂකයන් 4 දිනක් ඉදිරිපත් වෙලා තියෙනවා කියලා
මම නම් ඒක දන්නේ මං දන්නවා මං ගැන මං අඩියක් ඉස්සරහට තියලා තියෙනවා මං ආයෙ පස්සට ගන්න.
මට්ටමින් ඉන්න ඔබගේ හිතයි සින්න ඔබ ගැන බලාපොරොත්තු වුණා ඔබතුමා මොනවාරි පණිවිඩයක් දෙන්න තියෙනවද මොකද මේ ඔවුන් ඊටම නොවිසිල්ලෙන් බලා සිටින්නේ
කරුණාකරලා මං පණිවිඩයක් දෙන්නම් ඒක හොඳට අහගන්නවද?
I have an important message. Listen to it very carefully. There are 6.1 million families in this country. There are 22 million citizens. They're all my friends. They're all my brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. I don't have any other family. They are my family. My family is this country.
ඒ තමයි මගේ පවුල. මට වෙන පවුලක් නැහැ. මට තියෙන එකම පවුල් ගහ මේ රටේ ජනපරපුර.
And that was Mr. Sajid Premadasa speaking yesterday, and with a very powerful message that it is the people of this country who are his family, and clearly he's going to work for the greater benefit of his family, the people of this country. Now, Mr. Rusripala, how important do you believe that Mr. Premadasa's message is in terms of fighting this cancer that is also better known as corruption in Sri Lanka? Corruption seems to be endemic.
Far as I think he is absolutely on the correct track as far as his approach is concerned, because he has identified the need to unify his party, which which has been affected very badly in the recent past under the leadership of Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Most of the active people at different times chose to leave the party and join hands with other parties and other leaders because they were disgruntled lot due to lot of things happening in the party. You know, that great party was a unified party. It was kept unified as a great wall under leaderships like J.R. Jayawardena, you see, and also the previous leaders. But, during the time of Mr. Wickremesinghe, he chose to deal with a set of people, a chosen set of people who the country did not accept as leaders, but they were forced to accept as leaders because of the choice of Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. I think in that context, Mr. Sajid Premadasa has really identified what has happened to his own party and how he has lost some important key people in the role of activities of that party. So he's making this clarion call to all the people who left the party to join him, to support him in this battle. I think it's a very great step and it's a right step. And I think he's sounding more like the old late Mr. Premadasa, because he did not leave any stone unturned in his struggle, in his contest as the president. He went open to the people, and the people were his the saviors. And he worked. He promised things to the people, not to the others, not to a set of selected people. And the most important thing is, Mr. Sajid Premadasa appears to be one candidate who is not dictated by foreign terms, by internationally interested parties. That is what is cardinal for this country. Whoever the leader who is going to come has to play that role to keep the independence and the sovereignty of this country. I think Mr. Maitripala Sirisena as the president had a great time in resolving that and also safeguarding that situation. He safeguarded the country from being entering into various agreements which are very extremely harmful to the sovereignty of the country, and that has to be carried forward. And if the opposition party, the party that is contesting or in contest with even with Mr. Maitripala Sirisena for that matter, if it comes to that. And if they are both of the same view that this country should not be subjected to or surrendered to, the sovereignty of the country should not be surrendered to foreign forces, that is the most important thing. And in Mr. Sajid Premadasa, I have seen, I have followed his speeches. I mean, it really addresses the grassroots. Something that he is not addressing high-sounding economic policies. I think he has enough high-sounding economic policies that are applicable to this country, that are required to this country. He need not spell out the dictates of foreign leaders or from international force to come into this country to come to power or to be in power. He has enough things.
And I think also, Mr. Rusipala, that a lot of people fail to to appreciate the fact that Mr. Premadasa is a graduate from the London School of Economics, and although he has in his political career and especially in this government, he has paid heed and worked very hard at something that has been that is a key problem in this country, which is housing, and he's been plodding on at it for the last 4.5 years, and hopefully that a very valuable, invaluable aspect of our society here, the need for housing, will take on an altogether new meaning if Mr. Premadasa is in fact nominated by his party and goes on to a victory at the presidential polls. Now then, yesterday we had Mr. Kiriella who's saying that the candidate will be chosen by the working committee of the United National Party, and that they are meeting this morning and that they will make an announcement in due course. Now, Mr. Rusipala, how real is the prospect of fighting corruption in Sri Lanka?
I think for us, I think the most important thing now concerning the country or before us is, the way to avoid corruption. With the last government, the sitting government, they came to power promising that they will put an end to corruption. But I don't want to go through the entire list of things that have happened for us. But I want to say one thing. They have added on to the existing corruption that was there before they came to power in a very bad way. And with regard to Mr. Premadasa's this accusation about his being education and London qualification, I think I'm not very much concerned about those, because his father was a pragmatic person who could stand on his feet at the United Nations and get the whole world to pass a resolution that this is the year for housing for this whole world. He was a pragmatic man. He was not a London qualified man. I mean, these qualifications play to some extent only the role of a leader. A leader he should be a born person with a heart, down to earth heart, with the people. That is the most important thing. You go into some of the American presidents. They were not London qualified, or some people, some of them, the great people. There have been many who have come from ordinary masses. So I am seriously not worried about, all these things that are, leveled against him about his qualifications and so on. But he has enough pragmatism and closeness to the people of this country, at least to catalyze the other candidates to think in the right direction. That is what we need in this country. We need a good fight, a fight in the right direction, a fight with the correct concepts being given to the country, to the voters, to the people, for them to at least in future to ponder over as to where they made the mistake, if they do make a mistake.
You know, you said the right thing there, the fight, and that is what Sri Lanka needs, a commitment towards eradicating this cancer of corruption. And of course, the other point, of course, is that if we want peace, we need to be ready for war. So in that whole context, do you think, Mr. Rusipala, that Sajid Premadasa is the right mix? He is the right candidate that will appeal to all the communities in the country, and that he will be the galvanizing force behind a new reconciliation order to come?
People want the choice of a, if the people want the choice of a candidate who is not committed to international forces or being directed by international forces, I think Mr. Premadasa is the right choice, because he has not shown in any of his dealings or any of his past activities any subordination or subjugation to any of the foreign forces. He has enough material to think locally, domestically, and to attend to. So therefore, that aspect is extremely important for the national unity. The people in this country, they are ready to forget all these communal feelings, religious differences. When it comes to the question of development, when the country is taking a development phase in the true sense, all these things will vanish. And what they want is a free man who stands on his feet without subjugating or surrendering to any of the foreign forces. You call it neoliberalism or anything, or the dying capitalism, or forgetting all that. If a person is prepared to stand on his feet for the sake of the country, I think peace will follow. Peace will follow. Don't forget that Jaffna, the northern and the eastern provinces are treasures for this country. They need to be developed not by lip service. They need to be developed by addressing their issues at the grassroots level. Unfortunately, the politicians that they have selected and sent to parliament have not done that. And I am sure, with my little information that I have, there is a strong breakaway group from the established politicians in the north and east. This time, those people will play a dynamic role in selecting and giving their support to a new leader who addresses the issues of the people at the grassroots level, irrespective of communalist feelings, irrespective of religious differences. Therefore, peace will follow automatically as a result of addressing the economic issues at the level of the people. This is what I feel about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusipala. Having listened to Mr. Rusipala Tenakon, I feel ever so better that corruption and reconciliation will become part and parcel of the immediate life in Sri Lanka, that we will get rid of corruption, we will eradicate it, and we can then get on with dealing with the economy, as many messages say. Well, this is the end of the program this morning. We're sorry about the late start. The weather has played its own role in frustrating the arrival on the set of Mr. Wasantha Samarasinha. But hopefully today we will see an important announcement being made by the United National Party, and here at News First, of course, we'll be striving to be the first to bring you those news that news, and we'll be covering it on all our networks across our radio and TV networks on Sirsa, Shakti, and of course the radio stations as well. Thank you very much for your time. We'll see you again tomorrow morning at the same time, hopefully without any of the glitches this morning. Take care, and of course be careful out there. It's extremely wet and there's a lot of water around. Take care and God bless.